everybody, to our very first episode, our first official episode of Third Eye Salon. And we're just going to kind of go over who we are, why we're doing this crazy show, what our intentions are, and talk a little bit about the guests we want to have on as well.
I'm Lynda Coulter-Burge, and I am the other half of Third Eye. And so I guess that gives us two different perspectives on Third Eye. And in fact, there's a lot more perspectives because we'll have amazing guests on that bring even more in. But it's always with the intent of exploration. And I love that we are bringing this in Third Eye Salon, which is absolutely Kat in every essence. And you'll get to know more about him and get to know more about me. And I'm just really excited about this. I'm really excited to be part of this. And we'll get to talk about who we are so that you understand why we're doing this crazy thing and get to know us a little bit better. And hopefully over time we get to know you better too.
Absolutely. Well said. And this is also about creating community and creating a safe space for people to ask questions, discover their own abilities, unpack what it means to be psychic, what it means to be empathic, what it means to be intuitive, and how it looks different for different people. And there's no right or wrong way. It's the rainbow of spectrum of variation, and all of it's valid, all of it's beautiful, all of it's needed, all of it can be celebrated.
Yes, I agree. And so we have a little bit of structure, though both of us tend to resist structure. And so Kat, do you want to talk about what we're going to be talking about over the next hour, just so people have an idea?
Yeah, well, let's start diving in and talking about it. So let's talk about who we are. And by that, I mean, to give you some reference point, that we both have psychic, empathic, otherly abilities, and we've had our own journey with those abilities. We've had our struggles with it, our denial, our misunderstanding, what it looks like when we embrace it. And it just gives you a little thumbnail sketch of who you're connecting with here. So I would love to start actually with Lynda and hop in some of Lynda's stories. And just to kind of give you some key points, Lynda has had experiences as a child with shadow beings, experiencing a guide show up to tell her how to get rid of shadow beings. She had an actual ghost as a friend who she knew was a ghost and was her best friend. She had experiences in early adulthood. She's had experiences professionally in her business. So what stands out for you that you'd really like to share with everybody, Lynda?
So there has been a theme in my life that from early on, I would think, doesn't everybody do this? I'd have this question, whatever this was, this experience that I had, I assumed other people experienced. And so from the time I was a child, when I was a baby, I could remember how I died in my past life. And that really set a precedence for me. Doesn't everybody remember that? Doesn't everybody remember how they died? And literally as a baby, I would put padding and blankets behind my head because that's where I had been shot. And my mother was terrified that I would suffocate myself. And so I have this knowing, and maybe that's why I have these experiences throughout my life that are a little bit easier in some ways for me, that I took for granted having the friend that was a ghost until I entered school. And my mother said, stop talking about these crazy things. People will think you're strange. And having the ghost of all things actually agree with my mother. and say, she's right, I need to go away. And that was a defining moment for me. I wasn't okay as I was. And so I suppressed all of my abilities until young adulthood. And I don't want to see people do that. And that's part of why I'm doing this, is that even as they started to reemerge, and I'd have these pepperings, and I think we'll talk about all these pepperings of experiences, I would deny them. And I denied them all the way through, even challenged them at times. No, you're not real. No, that didn't happen. And question, am I losing my mind along the way as they started to reemerge? And my abilities now are, I'm clairaudient, I hear it, I'm owning it. I did business coaching and consulting, and my clients are the ones that kept saying, Lynda, the technical stuff is great, but what you're really giving me that's of value is whatever you do, that weird place that you go, when you look like you're listening to something and then you say something to me that was profound, and you had no idea of knowing it. But you really need to warn people, because you do this weird thing where you look right through them. And that happened so many times, I actually had to start owning it. And for me, I look back and there were so many instances in my life that I discounted, that I wrote off, that I also was intrigued by and curious about, but didn't have a way of validating it, or was afraid. More than that, I think I was afraid to validate it, because that old story, if I validate it, if I talk about it, people will think I'm weird. And so I have experiences of my past life. I have experiences of when I was in grade school, having an out-of-body experience for the first time. I have the experiences of the shadow people, and having this amazing being come and teach me how to expel that, how to bring safety to myself, that I would love to teach people. And I've seen two UFOs. I mean, and I saw them with people. And so all these things happen in my life that I would love to share, that give me more curiosity than anything. And for the first time in my life, I'm not shaking in my boots admitting that I have those experiences. And for me, that's what I'm hoping for our audience, is that they can see us going through this journey as we discover ourselves, as we discover what other people are discovering about themselves and what we're discovering about each other. And just have fun and do this in a mode of play and curiosity. And people will also learn that I am very much someone who goes from both sides of my brain. I'm very analytical and I'm very intuitive. And so there's a lot of times where you might see the dog ears go up and the what? Say that again? And that discernment that I want to bring to this, that willingness to ask difficult questions for better understanding, I think is important. It's important for me, and I think it's an important skill. One of the things that's about me is that if I surround myself only with people that I agree with and my tribe, I feel like I am really, really losing out. I want to learn from people who are different than me, who have different opinions than I have. And we may not ever agree, or we may find, hopefully we find some level of agreement along the way. But I think that's why I want to do this and who I am. And Kat had known for years. And I will always call him my psychic doula because he helps birth psychics. He helps give them a safe place to explore. And his ability to be an empath is incredible. And so I would love to hear more about Kat and his journey in this, things I don't know about him, and just enjoy his curiosity in this process. So Kat, I'm going to bounce it back to you and let you talk. I know.
Thanks. Well, thank you. Yeah, I will speak on the empathic piece. I think, like you, we had talked about this before where, and you had said this in your piece, isn't this normal for everybody? Isn't this just how it is? And I think that is the hallmark of whatever our gifts are, we take for granted. And I was always empathic, but I learned how to block it at a very early age because I didn't want to feel everything, but I did it really unconsciously. And it wasn't until I was hanging out with another psychic that I was describing to her what I was doing. I was catching what I was doing, and I was realizing what I was doing. And this was way back in my 20s. And I was explaining to her, and this was somebody who was full-blown psychic, couldn't help but be psychic. And I was saying how I just always had this curtain I pull down. There's just always a curtain there. I was being able to see it in this conversation. And she was saying, that's what I do when I need to take a break. And it was something that I had just learned how to do as a protective device throughout my life. But of course, there were times when I definitely had picked up people's emotions, and I had other experiences. I was always drawn to the paranormal. I was always drawn to the otherly. If it was Bigfoot, UFOs, Loch Ness Monster, it didn't matter. If it was out there, I was interested. So I did explore my psychic abilities when I was younger. I had some clairaudient experiences and was able to do some things with manifestation, and then, talk to our pastor and found out that it was demonic. And so I closed all those things down and turned my back on those out of fear. But I couldn't stay away from it because it's just part of who I am, And so then in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, I reopened back into it, and I began that process again of exploration and how to use abilities. And I found I could hop in and out of it, and I could do things, I could sense things, I could know things. Oh, I had some lucid dreams. I had some powerful lucid dreams in my 20s where I connected to spirit guides. And then it was kind of a journey throughout my life of, because I'm really more comfortable in that way of being, I like to explore. I'm a cosmic kind of guy. I like to explore all of that stuff. I'm comfortable doing that. But being physical was very difficult. There was a period where I really had to not focus on that so I could learn how to take care of me in a physical, practical way. But I could never resist that for long. I'd always come back into it, and I'd always open back up to it. And it's now at a point where I'm comfortable saying I'm an empath. I know how to use it to some extent. I feel like I have more to learn. There's more to get, but it happens naturally. The other part is that sometimes with me, the channeling and the empathy, it happens automatically, and I don't realize I'm doing it until I'm already in the water. It's like, oh, I'm in the process of doing this right now. I didn't even realize that's what it was, but yeah, I'm tuning in. This is coming through. This is what you need to know. And for me, with the empathy thing, it's really about being able to support people there are different types of empaths, there's different types of psychics. There's all these different nuances. So for my particular thing, it's tuning into where somebody's life is dysfunctioning and where there's a distortion or an old belief that's interfering, and being able to tune into it, see where it's connected to from their mother or their father, what the story is and what the truth is that's wanting to emerge through the story. So that's a lot of what I do. Is I will reflect back to people, and I do this whether you're psychic or not. My thing is really to show up and reflect back to people their beauty, their power. And that's one of my gifts, is I can see people. I can see the range of them much more clearly, maybe than the average bear. And in that, I'm able to reflect it back to them, and they're like, oh, like you cleared away the smoke. I can see myself now. And now in seeing myself, I see my options. I see what I can do. I see my choices. And to me, that's one of the biggest gifts I can bring, is giving somebody back to themselves.
That's
And that's
beautiful. And it is absolutely what you do, and it's what you've done for me over the years. And I truly appreciate that. And that's why I'm so excited to do this journey, because I see you with our guests that come on. You actually being able to do that even for our guests, some who will be well known, who are on our star list that we want to bring on, and some who are just emerging. And I love that we're willing to bring all types of people into this experience so that we can foster, we can bring on this new depth of understanding, not just for the audience, but for the person who comes into our circle for discussion and exploration.
Yeah, we absolutely want to give people who are emerging, like Lynda and I are emerging into our own. We have been resisting it, and we've been denying it. We've been playing around it, walking up to it, walking away from it. And now we're saying, oh, no more of that. Let's just own it and get on with it. And we want to give a platform to those people who are ready to do that as well, so they can feel supported, validated. And at the same time, we are going to ask them questions if something doesn't make sense, or if we just are curious about something or it doesn't sit right. We're going to ask questions to unpack it more, not in a way to say, well, that's not true. We're not here to play the debunkers, where we come in with a toxic skepticism. We're here to help people unpack it, so they're saying it, what they're doing, in a language that is accessible to everybody, or at least most.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think that, for me, again, it starts with self-exploration. One of the questions I ask is, what if I'm wrong?
Right.
What if what I believe is wrong? What do I have to validate that belief? And sometimes it is nothing more than an inner knowing. I don't have names and proof of my past life experience, but I have this visceral knowing of my past life. I have evidence of my mother telling me what I would do in my crib. I have evidence of energy workers, when I didn't even know what an energy worker was, asking me what happened. Why do I have this gaping hole at the base of my skull?
They would see it psychically.
They would see it. They would feel it. They would say, my gosh, I can't get it closed. What happened?
Wow.
And I finally had to say, well, that's where I was shot. And so I think that having that willingness to ask those questions, though, is important. It's important because we're in a society right now where so many people are taking sides, that there's no gray area. And we're willing to explore that gray area, and we're willing to explore and poke holes and ask in a way that is willing. Hopefully the participant in this is willing to play along and willing to explore those things too, and ask themselves, how do they know? How is that? Because I asked myself that all along. How do I know this is not my imagination? How do I know that this is really happening? How do I know that that crazy thing that I'm afraid to talk to anybody about is not just something that happened in my head? And being willing to ask those questions is important. And so I love that we're going to be willing to ask those questions and not just be bobbleheads and say, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. So fair warning, if you come on as a guest, we're not bobbleheads.
Right. And again, it's with the purpose of making it your content more accessible. And we aren't looking to make converts. We're not looking to start a what's the word, an echo chamber where we all believe the same thing. And like you were saying, excuse me, with the everybody is so take a side on something, whether it's, you know, political or wearing a mask because of corona or anything. There's just this almost vicious finger pointing if you don't believe the way that I believe, if you don't see it the way I see it. And there's not a lot of safe ground to have a varying opinion because everybody has a camp they belong to. And it's such a sign of our time in terms of if you're going to choose love or if you're going to choose separation. So as we choose love and we invite deeper discussions, we may disagree, but we will disagree respectfully. And I mean, that goes for our audience as well. As we have participation from our audience, whether it's a live chat or comments or what have you. We invite respectful disagreement. We invite respectful feedback and comments. If you're here to tear somebody apart, that's not what we're about. And that's not going to be allowed because that's not the community. So there's plenty of places to go and attack people, and there's a lot of drama to be had. That's everywhere. It's not here. This is meant to be a safe space for exploration, evolution, and community.
Well said, Kat. Well said. That is true.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the type of people that we will be bringing on.
Okay, sounds
Go
great.
ahead.
Well, I know I want to have people who channel. I'm always interested in channeling. The way that I channel is very natural. It's like my own wisdom coming through, and then it's a higher frequency. But there are people who they go into an altered state, or like Paul Selig, for example, who's amazing, where he's hearing it, repeating it, and he has his own unique way. So channelers, I'd like to have people who have had near-death experiences and who have gone to the other side, what they learned, what they brought back. People who have had encounters with other life from other worlds, and maybe they found out that, oh, my spirit guide is actually an ET. The whole range, I'm excited about all of it. What about you?
Same. I am excited about having 5 different people who do the same thing in completely different ways. I'm excited about people who have been on a journey and are willing to talk about that journey to bring awareness and compassion to people who are probably on a journey on their own, whether that is someone who has seen a UFO, whether it's someone who has had contact, whether it's someone who is a medium, whether we're talking about psychics, clairvoyant, clairaudient, channelers. I'm really curious about it all. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and not just really well-known people, but people who are like you are emerging. So we can talk about, what is it like when you question your own abilities. What is it like? I went through a year of, I'm hearing voices. Do I tell people I'm hearing voices? What does that look like? Am I schizophrenic because I hear voices? Well, I don't know. Those voices are telling me things just before they happen. How would I know that? Okay. And that process that I went through to understand that what I was experiencing were valid gifts that I could offer people, that they were their talents that I had, there were things I can tap into. I want to be able to talk with people from all different realms and walks of life that are at various stages of that journey, whether they're just beginning or whether they are making a life for themselves, and creating a community wherever they are on that whole process. I love book writers. I'm just wanting other people who are on this path of exploration.
Yeah, I think, we had talked in our demo recording about how we're sitting on this teeter-totter where you and I always help each other up. If you're down, I help you go up. If I'm up, you help. If vice versa, like we help each other do this thing where if I need support, you show up and you help me shift, and vice versa. And just to speak on that for a moment, I mean, Lynda's abilities are phenomenal, and I can't tell you how many emotional crisis points I've been in where I was able to connect with Lynda and have her get to the heart of it. Again, it's that practical and intuitive, talk about a seesaw, like those things are so balanced in her where she could ask very practical questions to get to the emotional core and be able to use her psychic gifts to unveil whatever I was hiding from myself. And also hanging out with her, it would boost my psychic ability and I'd be able to tune in better as well. Yeah, that whole thing of her discounting her abilities time and again, where I would be like, are you effing kidding me right now? Yeah, no other people do that. No one else, yeah, the way that she can tune in and just give content from any part of my life that I'm struggling with. So where was I going with all of that? Oh, this the seesaw. So the idea is like in this community where that thing that Lynda and I have been doing for each other, where it becomes a seesaw into a wave, a frequency where we are supporting each other and we're going higher in the frequency and we're going somewhere, it's moving, it's taking off, it becomes a journey. How there are many seats on that seesaw where you can join us and sit with us and become part of that wave, and then collectively we're creating something. Even as Lynda and I come in as hosts and presenters and teachers, we're students. We like to listen, we like to learn, we like to participate. So there's plenty of room for community to show up and reflect wisdom to us, and we learn from the people that we're serving. I think the best leaders do that. They lead from service and they let other people have positions where they are the guide and they're the insightful one, and there's an acknowledgement. It's not competitive, it's cooperative, it's collaborative.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. And yes, we have created that seesaw effect for each other over the years. And to bring others, I'm so excited at the thought of bringing others into that process as we move up and out and expand. And gosh, I look at the focusing on the frequency and where we put our focus and how often we focus on those frequencies. The frequency of the frequency. How often are we doing this and shifting it? And by each person that comes into this fold of exploration, we are increasing that frequency in just being a question. Because you and I have both learned that a lot of the connection that we grew and are growing with our divine selves, our connection at those other realms, is because we're willing to ask the questions. It's in the question that the universe comes back with. And so if we're not asking the questions, we're not having that curiosity, we're not growing. And as we bring others into this, and we're willing to ask those questions and the questions of our audience and explore topics we may not have even thought about that are offered up by our audience, I can't wait. I think that's going to be amazing. So yeah, it's so exciting to be at this, for me, a different level of curiosity and willingness to have different opinions, and just that for me is what is bringing me such joy in this process.
Mm-hmm. As you talk about it, I start to tune into the people that we're connecting to, you know, on the energetic level, and I can feel the love fest happening already, where we get to meet somebody who's been commenting or who's been interacting. We get to meet them in the physical, and there's so much excitement and there's such a hug because we're actually able to bring this virtual online family into something physical and tangible. And it's like old home week, you know what I mean? I've never met you before, but I feel like I've known you forever. And I'm so glad we're reconnecting in this now, and we get to participate. And I'm so excited to learn more about you, you know, the whole kit and caboodle.
Absolutely. And one more thing that we haven't talked about is that by doing this, we're also bringing resources to people. So people who come on will have the opportunity to share what they have with the audience, and just giving all of these options to people for people to explore, I think is phenomenal. And they get to experience, like you said, having this be an experiential discussion, and hopefully even get to witness some of what this person can do or has done, or it gives you options as an audience member, and I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, that is one of our intentions, is to be able to say, okay, we've had this discussion. Now, can you teach us how to do what you're talking about? Is there something that we can take away and practice, and give ourselves permission to be clunky at it, and give ourselves permission to just play with it and see what happens? Because no matter what happens, it's an experience. There's data, there's something to take away from it. Lynda and I have really had to learn and relearn and learn again. The whole beauty of the process is to be able to play. And it's something that our guides have both just, I know they've had their hands in their heads sometimes, and they're just like, we just want you to enjoy it. We just want you to, if you would stop working so hard and just give it a shot. And if you fall down, it doesn't matter. Would you do that? You know, and getting, I'll speak for about my experience, them just wanting me to stop taking it so seriously, stop making it black and white, get rid of the word perfection. What was the word? What was the word that you used?
Blossom.
Blossom.
We're flossom. We're flawed and we're awesome. We're flossom.
Yeah. That all of that, like all of that's texture, all of that is the gradient, all of that is the journey as we explore. And if you have to do something perfectly the first time, you are setting yourself up for failure. And personally, that's when I always will slam the door, be like, well, it didn't work. It's not going to work for me. I already know it's not going to work for me. And it becomes a downward spiral. So please learn from our mistakes and don't do that, or stop doing that if you are doing it. And we're here to support you to find that playful way of progressing forward and having the experience and not making it black and white, not making it win or fail, and letting it be okay. And then you take a next step, and then you take another step, and then maybe you rest for a while. And all of that journey is beautiful, allowed, and appreciated.
I think that we've probably covered what we need to cover on that. What do you think?
That feels pretty complete.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've talked about our intentions, and we've talked about some of our journey working together. That feels pretty solid, and it would be a great point to ask people what your questions are. What would you like us to go further into in terms of our experiences or our understandings? Lynda has had some tremendous, she's working on a book, I can tell you, because her experiences are so fascinating and extensive, and we'd love to share more, and we'd like to get your feedback on what to share.
We would love to hear what you'd like us to explore, what guests you'd like to have on. If you would like to be on, then absolutely, we will have an email address for you to explore that with us. And yes, I think that we have one more thing of why now, and we've sort of answered that. Why another podcast? Why now? And both of us felt there was this shift taking place that a lot of people are talking about, and it's both can be very scary and very expansive at the same time. And for me, part of it is why now for me personally is because it's time. And it's time for me to own it. I can't ask my clients to do something I'm not willing to do. It's a little hypocritical. So I am owning who I am and what I am doing. And I'm also realizing, I'm going to already probably trigger a few people. Election night, I did not watch anything that happened, and I had had months of this collective anxiety that I was feeling. And I woke up in the middle of the night and heard very clearly, externally, where I hear my hits, as I call them, Trump won, reset button. And I felt absolute peace, which was, I'm sorry, not the response I thought I would be feeling, though I probably wouldn't have felt that either way. But the reset button, I think that what I was getting to is that the first part of that was simply kind of a touchstone, a cornerstone to give me a piece of knowledge I didn't know, which is how things sometimes come through first. Like, oh, here's an attention getter. Here's something you don't know. Now listen to the message. And the message was reset button. And for me right now, part of the urgency of us doing this is that we are in a time of reset button. And now I'm hearing that everywhere, in every form. Our culture's in a reset button. Our economy's in a reset button. We are in reset mode. And what does that mean? And so for me, part of this why now is that we are wanting to explore new ways of resetting, and the exploration of how we bring these gifts into our lives to raise that frequency. I think that's the part that I have gotten really clear is it's time to show up. It's time to be proud of the gifts that each of us have. Stop playing small and hit that reset button on our lives and be in that journey full on, and be okay screwing up, be okay feeling silly, be okay being vulnerable. And by us doing this and stepping into all of that vulnerability ourselves, we're modeling what that looks like. And that for me is, you know, back that smack that we talk about.
Back the smack,
And it's
walk the
time
talk.
to back our smack.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that and a little bit and say that this is something I've been wanting to do, and there was a lot of internal alignment I needed to work on. I needed to clear and clean and get my own house in a position to be able to do this in a way that was effective and I wasn't self-sabotaging. And then when Corona became a thing, and there was, to me, the real pandemic is the fear. Like, that's the big pandemic for me, because I think that we have the ability to, again, people are going to get triggered on some of these things, but we're going to do a video on owning your triggers and how to allow to let someone else's opinion be different than yours and still stay in the conversation, which I know can be challenging. I know that very well firsthand. So with me, again, I feel confident in the body's ability to, and the mind's ability to produce health and stasis and to overcome whatever the obstacle, external obstacle is, the biggest obstacle being fear. And that was the wake-up call for me, seeing so many people double down in fear, and they were even afraid with their mask, and they're afraid to even look at you, because if they look at you, they're going to get the virus. And it just became this really, like, my heart hurt. And so I doubled down on love and was like, I'm going to send love out to people who are afraid, and I'm going to judge them. Like, everyone gets to have their experience and everyone gets to have their reaction. There's nothing wrong with any of it. I'm choosing to double down on love, and anybody who's in fear, I'm going to offer you love, whether you take it or not. And isn't this a great platform to be able to discuss these things in a way that's supportive, and we can unpack fear in a environment where we don't judge and we don't blame. And because you voted for this person, or you believe this about the economy, or any of that political stuff, this isn't a political discussion. Those things show up in the colors and nuances of the conversation, but we are not pushing any one belief system. Again, we're unpacking our belief system so we can really come to the core of what's true and let go of what is dysfunctional and not really serving us, and any unconscious programs that are muddling the path and creating havoc when we could have more alignment and a better time in general.
Right. And for me, like, even in this discussion, I wear a mask. You don't. I mean, and that's just the way, and maybe you do sometimes, and maybe you don't sometimes. And there are times there are times I don't, there are times I do. And my thing is having compassion. And
Yeah.
and also for me, I go back to, what if I'm wrong? What if I don't wear a mask and I'm wrong? What if I do wear a mask and I'm wrong? What are the consequences? And so that kind of, for me, is with everything, when we talk about it, it's being willing to ask those questions. And again, not a political platform, not a, opinions are going to come up. It's not a place for bashing. Opinions come up. If anyone were to look at my personal Facebook page, boy, you're going to see opinions come up on there. And in fact, Kat asked me one day, Lynda, do you live in a 5D world or a 3D world? And I wrote back, I thought about it, and I said, I live in both. And because we live in this world, we are going to have triggers. We are going to have opinions. We are going to trigger people, and we are going to have, probably every once in a while, a heated debate. And I'm totally cool with that. Mm-hmm. I'm totally cool having those tough conversations and questions, but also ultimately always in the place of love and understanding and commonality. And even with diametrically opposed opinions, we can usually find ways that they are both true.
Well, and everyone's experience is valid, but I really want to bring awareness to is that I'm not okay with making fun of anybody for not believing the way I believe. And I don't want to invite that way of thinking here, even if I have a belief about a politician or about the coronavirus or any number of things that people have very, very strong opinions on. I am definitely willing to be wrong, and my opinion about the virus is varied and wide, and how it's not black or white, because there are nuances, and I'm not going to make fun of somebody who doesn't believe what I believe, and I'm not going to assign myself to a particular camp. I think that's one thing that Lynda and I both find in common, where we don't subscribe to certain camps, and therefore we don't find our tribe online oftentimes, because it becomes very black and white and very much like, well, I can't believe you think that. I can't believe you'd believe that. We're going to laugh at those people and make, create memes and funny jokes about people who are diametrically opposed to our belief system. And it's like, to me, politically, I always say, two wings, one bird. I see this as a unified distortion field that's there on purpose to confuse people and walk them out of their power and into dependency. But you don't have to believe that. You can feel very strongly one way or another about our current president. I don't care. I don't care. I'm interested in you, I'm not really interested in your political opinion, but if you want to share it, you can. But it's not up for debate in terms of who's right or who's wrong. You get to have it. I don't have to believe you. You don't have to believe me. And that is the safe space that we're intending to create.
I agree. And I also, I did a class this week where we brought in objects and we described those objects. And so my point was, with every single person that described their object that they had, inevitably, without prompting, they talked about how that object had a meaning to them. They had an emotion attached to that object. And as we come through our opinions, as we come through events in our lives, it is the same thing. We come to it, and those emotions are emotions we have attached to that. And so being willing to be that observer, and being willing to observe what's happening with the people, and aware that we're bringing the emotions, the triggers, the experiences of our past into the present moment, doesn't mean that we can't change what that is. And by being willing to look at that and being willing to ask what ifs, and being willing to question our own beliefs in a positive way and challenge each other. Kat and I challenge each other all the time, which I love. Then I believe, in done the right way, we are raising our frequency.
Yes. Yeah. Well said.
Okay, so next steps.
Next steps. Well, our next video, I think, has to be talking about triggers, and has to be talking a little bit more about. This is just a preview, and talking about echo chambers. And I think this is a good place to say thank you to our viewers, and thanks to my goddess friend Lynda for doing this with me. And I'm excited for what's to come next.
I am too. I can't wait to go on this journey. We're on
it already.
We're on our journey. And yes, and that my book is going to be Journey to Wisdom. And that is we're all on that journey. We're all on that journey. And so I can't wait to walk that journey with you and everyone else.
Amen. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.